Hope my internet works. All right, so we're recording. Q&A. There we go. Got people coming in. Beauty. All righty. So thanks to everyone for coming along to Des Talks episode number 3. We're lucky to have the guys from Reece and Jack from Norris along tonight to talk to us all things construction engineering and civil engineering. I'll start off with a bit of housekeeping and welcome to country. Whoops. Apologies, I forgot to share my screen. There we go. That is hopefully working. So, as we gather for this meeting, physically dispersed and virtually connected, let us take a moment to reflect on the meaning of place, and by doing so, recognise the various traditional lands on which we do our business today. We acknowledge the elders past, present and emerging of all the land we work and live on and their ancestral spirits with gratitude and respect. So a bit of housekeeping. If anyone has any questions or if anyone can't hear us during the webinar, feel free to use the chat and the Q&A function. And for questions, we'll try and answer them as we go, but there'll be a bit of time at the end to answer a few questions. So we'll start off with a bit of an introduction of all of us panelists, do our discussion and then open Q&A at the end. Excuse me for one sec while I work out how to use Zoom. All right, so I need that. Yeah, thanks again everyone for coming. So my name's Trent. I'm the president of the Deakin Engineering Society and I'm a third year civil engineer. So pass over to Chloe. Introduce.
Well, I'm Chloe and I'm the secretary of the Deakin Engineering Society, and I'm also studying civil engineering in my third year. So Reece and Jack, could you give us a bit of an intro and a bit of a background of where you guys are from, what you do in Norris and everything, please?
Yeah, so my name's Reece Karacsay. I'm 27 years old, living down in Anglesey at the moment. I sort of started in the construction industry a couple of years before uni because my old man has a small construction company. Did a few years there and then worked out that I really enjoyed construction, went to uni and wanted to further advance myself. So I did civil engineering at Deakin back in 2014. From there, got a job at Norris and now I'm a senior project manager.
And my name's Jack Cornwell and I've been with Norris for a touch over 18 months now, working as a project engineer. Studied at Deakin as well, so I spent 4 years there. Never really knew exactly where I wanted to go afterwards and sort of just luckily fell into this and loving every day.
Beauty. Sounds good. Chloe?
So you both sort of mentioned how you guys got into Deakin and how you studied. So what actually brought you to Norris exactly?
So how I started at Norris was a family friend was an architect and that was the first point of contact. They sort of just said they worked with Norris a lot and they liked their sort of diverse skill sets and how they sort of did a bit of concrete, drainage, structural stuff, landscaping, and there was sort of a lot to learn there. So my first point of call was like a family friend knew someone at Norris. Before that, it was sort of the classic. I applied for all the grad roles at all the big companies and then worked my way down. I didn't have any luck because my resume was no better than anyone else, but really glad I started with Norris because I'd sort of say it was a smaller company at the time, 6 years ago. And yeah, it's really enjoying it at the moment. So.
It's good to hear. Do you want to tell us a bit more about the roles you've undertaken? Because speaking to Jack, you said you had quite a few different type of roles within the company.
Yeah,
from
so
then to now.
When I started back in 2014, I was doing a few days a week labouring. That's usually how we like to bring in most of our graduate students. And then from there, I got offered a project engineer role after my last year at university. And that was really good. I was sort of across 2 or 3 jobs and I had a one-on-one mentor and a project manager during that first 12 months. And at the end of that 12 to 18 month period, she actually got another job at a different company. It was sort of one of our competitors, but on a larger scale. And then at that time, our general manager was sort of stuck that I was a project engineer, probably not quite ready to be a project manager, but he just sort of took the risk and the gamble and empowered me with her role. So I was kind of thrown in the deep end really quickly, which was pretty stressful at the time and a lot of sleepless nights, but it all paid off in the long run because, yeah, like I was willing to work hard and just sort of made the most of the opportunity. And then from there, we started to grow as a company as well. Like we were turning over an additional 20% per annum every year. I think it was about 74 people when I started. Now we employ over 220 people as a group. So it's nearly tripled in that time. My current role, I mean, my title says Senior Project Manager. I guess that basically means I'm looking after a group of project engineers and project managers at the moment. So the way the company's basically structured is there's 2 senior project managers, and basically all the jobs is split down that tree. So I've got a team of sort of 5 or 6 project engineers and project managers, and then they have site foremen and a heap of guys under them. My current role is pretty diverse. I still do a lot of estimating and stuff on the side, but my role now is probably more developed into mentoring new up-and-coming graduates, project engineers and other project managers. Sort of taking a slight step back on actually running jobs myself because I've got such good teams under me now, which is good. So I feel like I can pass on a lot of the knowledge that I learned quite quickly in the first few years.
Can you give us any insight into what projects you're doing at the moment, just for people who are interested?
Yeah, absolutely. So I don't know how much you guys probably know about Norris, but we basically start with the bulk excavation, and on a large scale project, we like to do nearly everything that's under the ground, all the way up until the first sort of structural concrete pour and even the first suspended slab. So basically bulk earthworks, car parks, drainage, structural concrete and landscaping. And then another part of our arm is we do a lot of recycling and crushing as well. So when we do demo works and pull up existing roads and concrete and stuff, we've got a big recycling facility in South Geelong as well. So a lot of that stuff gets crushed up and recycled and put back into road base and pavements and stuff like that too. That's like basically an overview, but so more project specific. We're doing quite a large job out at the Lara prison. That's a $1 billion extension out there. We've got about a $10 million civil package as a part of that at the moment. And then I think we've got 30 or 40 jobs across the board that range from 100,000 all the way up to 12 million at the moment, which just comprise of all different bits and pieces. We basically work all across Victoria, from Western Melbourne to down to Drysdale, all the way from Torquay. So we cover quite a large map at the moment.
Yeah, beauty. So where do you see, or what do you see happening for the future and the future of yourself at the company and the company as a whole, I guess?
Yeah, so we basically never say no to work here at Norris, and I think that's why we've grown so rapidly. Like we always just try and take on more and more. So like we've got a projected growth that in the next couple of years we're hoping to turn from a $70 million company into a $100 million company, and by that time probably employing over 250 people in the Geelong region. So it still looks healthy from where we're sitting. I mean, the only roadblock at the moment is obviously COVID-19 and everything that's happening with the economy, but we're hoping that the government can throw stimulus into the construction industry, because I think like it directly and indirectly employs a lot of people as well, because if people are spending money, then they're going to the milk bar and then they're going out to restaurants and then they're buying clothes. So like it all sort of indirectly affects the construction industry, so to say. Personally, like I'm really enjoying what I'm doing. I think my role just keep developing in the large scale sort of project management side of things, but also I really enjoy trying to pass on knowledge, like I said earlier, to graduates and up and comers as well. I think that's the key. Like, and I feel like I've got a good relationship with all the people that I work around at the moment. I feel like I'm fair, but I expect everyone to work pretty hard, sort of thing. So I hope to stay here for a long time yet. I never thought I'd be a one company sort of man. I mean, I've been here 6 years, but there's no reason for me to leave it. It's a pretty young company. I think most of us are under 30. The average age is still be under 30. Our general manager and director is only still 42. So it's a really young, energetic company. So a lot to look forward to, I think.
Yeah, beauty. So do encourage students and graduates from your experience to consider going into the construction industry, because like obviously within civil you've got a lot of design based things and you've got construction, and they're quite different in themselves obviously, but yeah. So what's your take?
They are quite different, but you'd actually be surprised how much design we do unofficially as well. So when we get handed a lot of contracts, they're what's called like a design and construct contract. So there's an opportunity for us to actually pull apart some of the jobs and do in-house redesigning and stuff as well. So we've got a few surveyors and not certified designers, but what we do is sort of pull the job apart and then go to a proper design engineer and actually go, oh, this is our sign off, this is what we think we can do. For people that couldn't initially get a job in design but still were leaning towards construction industry, I think it's a really awesome way to get practical understanding of how everything actually works on the ground and what happens from a commercial sense as well. Because to be a good design engineer, you actually need to understand money as well. Like, it's easy to design something that's conservative, but when you're designing things that are basically on the line, you need to understand that practical side of things and the commerciality of it. I'd encourage people to look towards the construction industry, because I think it's like I said before, it's a strong part of our economy. So I think there'll always be work there. When I first started my degree, I was always leaning on mechanical engineering, and I wanted to get in the automotive industry, but that back 6 years ago, they were looking to move overseas. That was the start of like Toyota and Holden, all those guys moving. Versus construction will always be with us. I think, we're always going to be building things and further developing our community. So.
Unreal. Chloe, do you want
to? So would you give any advice to anyone that's considering going into your industry, or like for anyone that's recently graduating as such?
Yeah, I think you need to try and, if you're an undergraduate and you're still at uni, I'll start with that. Like, I was always a big believer of trying to get work experience and trying to just expose yourself into the industry as much as you can. I know it's pretty daunting at the start, and it's hard to get into cadet roles and undergraduate sort of roles, but like, I wouldn't be afraid to even get out there and door knock for anyone that's listening, and just go talk to guys in the industry. And people come up to us all the time here at Norris and sort of just say, well, I'm an undergraduate, what can I do? What can I start with? And I think like companies like ourselves, they'll always consider people that are hardworking and willing to have a crack. I think the earlier that you can get your foot in the door, like, it pays off in the long run if you're willing to do the time. Like, even if you're trying to donate your time at the start and saying, I'll do a Friday or a Saturday or something like that, like, I just highly recommend that. And also, create strong relationships while you're still at university. I think try and connect with your peers as much as you can as well, because I've noticed now I've got sort of 20 plus mates that have similar roles at different companies, design engineers, large scale builders, other civil contractors, and those relationships that you develop at university, you'll really carry through into your career as well. So yeah, my couple of tips would be try and get work experience as soon as you can, and keep developing strong relationships with your peers at uni.
Yeah, good call. That networking's really, really important, and
absolutely
something you need to definitely carry. I don't know if you know off the top of your head, but is there any sort of graduate, undergraduate program that Norris offers at all?
Absolutely. We've put it in the Deakin Job Shop a couple of times before when we've been sort of more desperate for project engineers and undergraduates, and I think we've picked up a couple of people before. But like unofficially as well, like we're always hiring people too, sort of thing as well. So feel free to always door knock, or I can pass on my details at the end of this. And like, I'm happy to always look at someone's resume, and I think like we'll always consider that person.
Yep.
When you employ over 200 people, like you're always turning through workers and the workforce. So yeah, we'll definitely offer a graduate role. It's not as structured as some other like large scale companies, but we've sort of just got a motto that if you're hardworking and a good person, we sort of tailor a role to suit you as well in the long run. So yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Really, really good.
We might jump over to Jack now. So Jack, you're a bit more like a recent graduate from Deakin. Can you tell us about your experience, especially because you went overseas for your internship type thing, and you're still on those videos that I see on the website? Just give us a bit more of a in depth about that.
About the time overseas.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I went overseas between 3rd and 4th year as part of the Deakin Abroad program. So we actually went with quite a large group of people, and we were all really close mates beforehand, which definitely helped. But I wouldn't say it was necessary. Like, there was a fair few that went and I didn't really know before the trip, and it really sort of brought you together. So I suppose from that sense, it was a really good sort of social thing, even though it obviously had the academic side as well. So I personally went to Malaysia. We spent the first 2 weeks at the university over there, UCP, and it was really, really interesting, really amazing. We did sort of like a mini project. It was almost like structured like your final year project, but obviously crammed into 2 weeks. So we actually did a fair bit of background before we went, and did some accessible work back at Deakin, and then actually finished off with mentors over there doing more of the lab field-based stuff, and then presented at the end of the 2 weeks. And then from there we moved down to Kuala Lumpur and actually worked there for 6 weeks. So I was in Malaysia for Christmas and New Year, which was a bit of a strange feeling. First one away from mum and dad and the rest of the family for my life, which was pretty interesting. But yeah, that was a really good experience. Sort of working overseas, seeing how they operate, just the differences in standards, and where they adopt all their standards from, because obviously a lot of it doesn't really exist yet. So, and then obviously I touched at the start on the social aspect, and yeah, definitely highly recommend it for anyone considering it, or even if you're not really considering it, I'd still definitely recommend it.
Obviously, when we can go overseas and it's not 2020 coronavirus.
Correct.
So do you want to go into your final year project, because I think some people might find that quite interesting?
Yeah, so my final year project obviously is quite different to where I've ended up after uni. So I actually I always sort of really enjoyed working with water at uni. It was just something I really got. It was just something logical about it. It was still maths, but like everything just made sense. It was sort of common sense in a way. And I had really good relationships with my call it mentor, teacher, supervisor.
Yeah.
So I sort of just went into something that was going to be working with Nick. So I ended up doing membrane filtration, which was pretty heavy in the lab. Essentially, it was just working at membrane distillation, just working at removing contaminants from water and finding effective ways to do that with different membranes. So that was pretty cool.
Yeah, nice. So how did that, like, you said that wasn't really related to what you were doing now, so how did you actually end up in Norris and into construction as such?
Yeah.
Water and construction kind of a lot different.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I actually found that even from like secondary college coming through university, I never really knew what I wanted to do. And I'm not sure, probably some people watching this might be feeling the same, like you can sort of find your way. But I just enjoyed uni for what it was and sort of just went with the flow. I always liked maths, always wanted to get into something, and I just never really knew whether design was for me. And then I was just really quite fortunate to fall into this role. A bloke I used to go to uni with pretty much rang me spare at the moment. I was just recently graduated at the time, still working at a pub, doing some part-time hours back home I was doing some engineering work back home. Answered the phone call, said that they were looking. Basically rang Cameron, who's managing director, and within the hour had been offered a job, and the rest is history. Like, sort of found going through uni, you don't hear much about construction, like everything, especially like just with DES and everything you taught, like you sort of civil just gets pushed into the design. But as Reece said, like I feel like it's obviously only been in the industry for 18 months, but I feel like it's a really good place to start.
Yeah, we hear a lot more from a design aspect for civil engineering, especially than being out in the actual field. which is where I feel like most of your basis comes from, but that's my personal opinion.
Yeah.
The design, the civil course at Deakin, like personally, it's very heavily design based. I feel there's not a hell of a lot that will relate to your project engineer type job, but I guess you guys could probably attest having that grounding, I suppose, in the design field will definitely help you out on the field. And
Yeah. I actually found as well, like we were, I think, the first year of the new structure of the course, where you did a lot of like double credit point units where you actually go right through, the expression of interest and sort of go through the project. So whilst it's still quite design heavy, I think they sort of have addressed it reasonably well. Like you still do touch on it, but yeah, definitely.
yeah.
So Reece went through his roles with Norris. Where do you fall into that scheme of things?
Yeah, absolutely. So I obviously started in January of last year, and basically started back where it all began at Deakin. So obviously all the entrances were being done there, entrance 1 and entrance 2. My first 3 months, a solid 3 months, it was sort of just on-site labouring, anything from a shovel to a rake to a demo saw, water cart, just doing all the fun stuff.
To a lollipop lady.
Yeah, lollipop lady. Yeah. It was really, really enjoyable. I just found that just being able to never say no, that was one thing that I really enjoyed. Like, if you've never done something before, just say you're confident, like work with it. Like we had a really good crew out there, and like we had some really good foremen that sort of take you under their wing and show you and help you, and it really helps you grow. And find like, in that first 6 months, I probably had 12 to 18 months experience. Like just the ability to be able to fast track in the company is really, really good. So I sort of went from that and then took on more and more responsibility as the job quietened off and we lost resources out of it. And then eventually found my way into the office, and now obviously more into a project engineer role, looking after a few different jobs right through from sort of the QA to helping with the project management and doing some job procurement and sort of resource management, and just sort of looking after a smaller bunch of jobs and just trying to stay involved. Really enjoying it.
Yeah, real. I just got to look where I'm up to. Sorry, I just got myself lost. So why would you recommend students to consider pursuing a career in the construction industry versus, say, the design industry?
Probably mostly echoing Reece's comments here. It sort of depends who you are and what you really want to do. Like I wouldn't necessarily say construction is what you have to do and where you have to go. If you're passionate about design and that's what you want to do, then by all means get in there. But I think it just really helps broaden your horizons. Like working in construction, and especially as a contractor, you form relationships with everybody. So like I just know already I've been dealing with clients, I've been dealing with designers, I've been dealing with council and just contractors of our own. Like you really form some great relationships, and you sort of, as Reece said, you see your design actually happening, and you see why things work and why things don't work, and and it sort of helps. But then again, like I'm not saying it's the best way to go. Like you obviously have to pursue what you're passionate about. The industry is definitely there, and I think it's very helpful, but it's sort of horses for courses where you want to end up.
Yeah, great advice. Chloe?
I don't really know what to ask anymore. Do you have anything else?
Oh, we had a question come through. So, question is, what is it like dealing with large versus small construction companies? So, something like a Norris compared to a company like the likes of John Holland or that, because obviously you've got like a tier 1 and tier 2. How does the work compare and the general structure of the company, maybe? Or
so we probably enjoy working for the smaller scale construction companies a lot more because they're a lot more practical at the moment. When you work for John Holland, they've got large teams of project engineers and safety guys, and it's hard matching them one for one. So out of the prison, for example, they've probably got 45 project engineers / projects out there. So it's very demanding. Like they really expect a lot from us all the time, and it's full on. So like we've got to kind of match them with project engineers back. On a smaller scale construction company, we're usually the head contractor. So we'll work directly for the client, and there's no middle man in between. So we sort of run our own show, which doesn't mean it's any less safe or any less compliant. It's just one more person to deal with in the middle, if that kind of makes sense. Yeah. But they've all got their positives and negatives, for sure. What do you think, Jack?
Yeah, you've probably got more experience to answer the question than I do, especially out of the prison. But yeah, I think he's pretty much going to hit the nail on the head.
Yeah, nice. So you're saying out of the prison and your bulk earthworks you do. So out of the prison, are you doing more of the what does the job out there entail? Because I've heard a bit from the Civil X guys who I've done a bit of work for. But
so I can take you through that contract. So basically, we teamed up with Civil X just before Christmas at their tendering and bid stage of things. They're our head contractor, so like we're technically working for Civil X, or Simul's their new name now. They needed to use Geelong-based contractors, and there was a certain part of their social procurement in the bid. I think from there, though, we kind of just thought it was like a token into the job, but then they actually carved us off at quite a large scale, or what we thought was a large scale of the large portion of the scope. So that's sort of sitting around $7 to $10 million at the moment. We started back in January with the bulk earthworks. So Simul controlled like 80% of the site, and we sort of had the top 15 to 20%, and we basically ran our own show up there. So we did bulk earthworks, a lot of large scale drainage as well, deep 1200 diameter pipe drainage, all the way down to like 150 diameter drainage. So we're basically doing nearly 60% of the drainage contract out there. Then from there, we started getting into crushed rock placement for the car park as well. So that was another large part of the job up there as well. And then also a lot of big common service trenches too. There are a lot of like electrical, hydraulics, and that type of thing go through there too. So we're digging those trenches with big sort of 60-ton excavators, moxies, truck and trailers. So everything out there is like quite large scale, and it's really awesome. Like Simul do a really good job, and so did John Holland. There's a lot of moving parts. Other people might know, but I think there'd be 300 or 400 people on site at the moment, I reckon. So a lot of coordination out on that site, especially for the Simul guys.
Yeah. You go, Chloe. Apologies.
Sorry, I was going to ask another question. Especially with COVID happening, explain to everybody how that has sort of affected your work so much.
Yeah, so the biggest thing for us was obviously that transition from going from Geelong to Melbourne with the new permit scheme. I don't know if everyone's familiar with that, but basically you've got to fill a permit out every day that explains where you're going and why you're working there. And then there's all different rules on what size projects can have different amounts of people on site as well. So if you're classified as like a non-essential project, they basically try to shut you down. Then from there they work up. A lot of sites that we're on can only have a maximum of 5 people. And then there's other rules that they say you can have 25% of the normal workforce, which that becomes pretty grey as well. There's a lot of sort of grey areas. So say, you are 200 people is our normal work site, so then you have 25% of that, but you can kind of shuffle those numbers around a little bit as well. So it's kind of, it gets a little bit complicated. We're pretty lucky that only 2 or 3 jobs in Melbourne got completely shut down. One was like a residence club or something, so they sort of, they said it was non-essential. And then we've had a couple of COVID scares, like on one of our Werribee police job, it was shut down for a couple of days because someone came to site with COVID. But luckily, touch wood, out of the 220 people that we've got, no one's had a positive case. The other thing that's really hurting us at the moment is obviously you've got to stay at home if you've got a sniffle or a cough. So at any one time, we've probably got 20 or 30 workers at home getting tested. And we would have done hundreds of tests over the last couple of months. But yet again, like I said, it's negative, but it's still killing you that you've got 20% of your workforce sitting at home waiting to be tested. versus if this was this time last year, you just say, well, it's just a cold, like, you know, have your 1 or 2 days off and then come back to work. We've also then noticed that a lot of the margins are dropping in our tenders as well. I think clients are realising that because a lot of people are out of work, they can keep pushing prices down. So we've got to be really careful that we don't drop our margins too much that we start losing money, but we still have to be competitive, that we keep winning bids as well. So super challenging, but like, I know we're lucky compared to a lot of other contractors. Like, we've genuinely got a lot of work on at the moment, and we haven't had to let anyone go at the moment too, which is really positive too.
Yeah, it's very lucky and fortunate for the people that you have with you. Trent?
Just trying to think. Sorry, I'm just trying to read my screen that's completely gone dark. So I guess final insight and advice, if you could give your past self any advice from when you were at uni, any advice to move forward outside and I guess break out into the engineering world, what advice would you tell your past self? Start off with Reece, if you want to.
Yep. I probably would have taken a few more courses a bit more seriously at Deakin. Like, I think developing relationships, like I said, with my peers, that was easy. I think it was quite natural, but probably spending more time developing relationships with lecturers or even more people in the industry as well. Like, I think looking back now, they had a lot of knowledge that I didn't tap into at the time. I probably would have spent a bit more time with people that have spent time in the industry. So like, if you have a lecturer that's got some good past experience, maybe catching up with them and talking about what they thought were positives and negatives when they were out on the field as well. I think it's just honestly about exposing yourself as much as you can at all times. And obviously, like, tuning into something like this is just the extra step as well. Like, I think, this is a good program too. So that's what I recommend.
Yeah, great. Go for it, Jack, if you've got anything else.
Yeah, I, through university, probably didn't get into the industry early enough, I think, in hindsight. I always worked through uni. I actually worked at a pub and I ended up working quite a lot of hours out there in sort of third year and fourth year. And they sort of went through a spell with a manager and I stood up and I was doing 40 hours plus a week and was really enjoying it. I had a great social life. I was doing well with my course. But, you know, in hindsight, it's just the early you can start those relationships with industry and also maintaining them with, you know, your other peers. It's I think it's seriously advantageous. Like, I was quite fortunate to land where I was here, but it's definitely something I'd recommend. And I know Reece obviously went down that path and he's recommended that as well. But I just think you can't underestimate getting into industry. And even, like, you know, I know part of the course is doing that in the fourth year, but you don't have to wait to third and fourth year. I think getting into it first and second year actually really puts you a step ahead of everyone else, you know, like just for your own development, but also just for your resume. I think it really shows that, you know, you're thinking. And
do a bit of door knocking too. Like, I know, like, we get lazy advertising too. Like we said before, we did a little bit of stuff with the job shop. But I know if you went to Draper's and Wellham's and all our competitors, I'm sure if you like showed up with a resume and said, I'm really keen, I'm eager, you know, it all helps. I bet you'll learn something, because I knew myself when I was applying for graduate and undergraduate roles, like I would have applied for 20 or 30 jobs and didn't get anything. But once you get your foot into the industry now, like I'm confident that I could get jobs at multiple companies just because I've got such good contacts now. So I think it's just that initial icebreaker, like just trying to make that first step, and just don't be afraid to expose yourself. Like, people know you're graduates and they'll take all that into consideration when you knock on the door. So.
Yeah, great. No, that's really good. I had another question come through from Gemma. What was it like going through the COVID permit process? And was it difficult trying to find out the relevant information?
Yeah, I think we touched on that briefly just before, but what was difficult was, I don't know if you guys remember on the news, I think they basically said, all right, we're going to release this whole permit process. It might have been on Sunday or Monday night, and you basically only had 2 or 3 days to actually start developing these permits. So on the first day, I think the whole system even crashed. So our office receptionist, Kirby, actually broke down in tears by 2 o'clock on the first day, because there was just so much pressure that basically the government saying if you don't get your permits in, 100 people aren't going to be going to work tomorrow. Looking back now, there's probably always some grace in these lead times, but like at the moment, it's very strict. Like, you don't know if you've been to Melbourne, but you go up to Melbourne, you come back through the roadblocks, and basically you got to explain yourself why you're coming back to Geelong. And if you don't have your permit, it's A, a fine, and B, it looks pretty bad on the company too, or whoever you're working for if you don't have the relevant paperwork. No, that's a good question.
Yeah, beauty. Chloe, did you?
We might go into fast five. Trent can start us off though, just for a bit of fun now, as we're winding up.
Yeah, I'm nervous.
All right, we'll start off with Jack, so Reece can calm his nerves.
Yeah.
What was your last multi you put on, and did you get up?
I actually had the same game multi on for you last night, and didn't get up.
Damn. Was it Palmer or Palmy?
Palmy.
Okay, we'll just brush over that. Never mind.
Sure.
Definitely Palmer, but okay.
Yeah.
It's Palmer.
That's New South Wales, isn't it?
I actually say palm quite a lot, which is pretty lazy. Working at a palm, you can yell in the kitchen, chicken palm. So
There you go. If you're on a deserted island, what would your 3 essential items be?
that's me. Beer.
Yep.
Races and a footy.
Pretty basic items.
basic requirements. So beer or wine?
Wasn't beer for sure.
Beer. Yeah. Could have guessed
See
that one.
sneak one before.
What's that?
So we did see him sneak some before.
That was pre-recording, wasn't it?
Easy to know.
Don't top me, Chloe. If you could have any 3 people, living or dead, around for dinner, who would they be?
Crikeys. Tommy Hawkins, the great man.
Uppercutters.
Absolutely. All right, that's a great question. You might have stumped me there.
Surely you got 2 people.
Yeah, sure, there's more footy players.
Yeah, File up. Yeah, I think that's it. I think it actually stumped me. I'm trying to think of someone good, but
No, that's all right.
We'll jump over to Reece then if you can't think of anyone.
Oh, my 3?
Yep, go for it.
Jimi Hendrix, Kelly Slater, and Tony Hawk.
You're nice.
Mint.
What was your last multi, Reece?
I usually only put on multis on the back of like someone else. I'll throw a 20 in the mix and like when you'll be out drinking or something. Like I can't remember what the last one I put on myself. I do a bit of trackside, but the last multi I did independently.
What was your last trackside then?
Yeah, probably down at the Deakin Jack pub when it was open 6 or 7 months ago. Usually just jump on the one that hasn't won in about 150 races and see if you can get lucky.
Bit of waste of money there.
Right.
What would your 3 essential items be if you're on a deserted island?
Definitely a snorkel because I love diving, so it's something to try and create food myself. A gun if there was any wild pigs or deer. Third one would probably be a surfboard. What do you? That can't be food deserted. How do I survive?
That's the point of the question, but yeah.
Well, a surfboard, a snorkel, and a slug of beer.
There we go.
That's nice.
I think that nearly wraps us up.
Yeah, that's about it. If anyone listening has any more questions, feel free to whack them in now and we'll get them sorted. Otherwise, we'll finish up.
Just a big thanks on behalf of Des for coming and giving up your time tonight. You guys do work long hours, so thanks for doing this for us.
No, it's our pleasure. And like I said before, if anyone listening, feel free to reach out, even just knock on the door and ask for Reece and Jack. That's probably a start. But even if we don't have any jobs going, we could probably point you in the direction of someone else that might, or we've got some pretty good contacts, like Jack said before, with architects, designers, other people in the industry, so it won't hurt to reach out.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, thanks, guys. Yeah, thanks from me as well. And yeah, really appreciate having you guys on and listening to everything. I hope it's given people a really good insight into what construction's about and what it means to really break out into the industry, and some tips and tricks on how to do it. So
Thanks for having us.
Perfect. Yeah, thank you.
yeah, cheers. And this will be recorded for anyone, and we'll post it via our social media channels. And yeah, hope to catch everyone in the next one.
Sweet.
Perfect.
All good.
Cheers.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
Going down.
See you guys.
Bye.
Catch up.